right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back for another episode. We have Christine Marie Mason on the podcast today, author of many books, but today we are focusing on the 9 lives of women, which of woman, rather. Let me not even mess up your title. This is amazing. Thank you so much for coming on to the show today.
Thank you for having me. I love that you're out there giving the good news about sexuality every week. So appreciate you.
Yeah, it's such a taboo thing, as I'm sure you talk about in your book, and there's so much shame and stigma around talking about these different things, especially I think for women. And so you've had several books, but this book, 9 Lives of Women, it is really encompassing, as you said, all stages of life of women.
Yeah, I think that actually what you just said is one of the drivers for writing the book. I did a survey of my customer base and asked them who they could talk to about sexuality and reproductive health, and their partners, their children, their doctor, their friends, their mother. And 201, no matter what generation they were in, they said the most difficult person to talk to was their mother.
Wow.
And I was like, wow, that's such a crazy idea. If we're not learning how to be in a body from our mothers from a very young age, if that's hidden from view, then who are we learning it from, you know? And so part of it was to try to improve transgenerational communication on all these things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, breaking those generational patterns, of being able to, let me be the light for you, whether that be my daughter, my sister, my cousin, my neighbor, right? And like, let me be this safe person for you to be able to ask questions to and explore sexuality with, or explore just those questions that come up. And it sounds like, as your book talks about, there are many questions that come up around sexuality in our lifetime.
Yeah, there are so many things people like say, like periods, things around pregnancy, things around perimenopause or menopause, or even aging well with sexual grace, that people are like, I never knew, no one told me. And I'm like, how could no one tell you? So my one of my hopes is that men and women both would be able to talk about their own what would be considered intimate anatomy in a way that they would talk about their elbow.
Mhm.
Oh, it's cool as well. That's part of the goal.
Yeah, I similar goal. I'm like, I hope that we can talk about sex as just in the same as we talk about the weather. Like, just so natural, normal. And as I'm looking outside now, it was just hailing here like 10 minutes ago, and now the sun is out. And if that is not a metaphor for
Right.
womanhood, right? Like how much things,
Yes.
how
Yes.
quickly things
Follow the season.
change.
Yeah.
Yes, as we said, we are one with Mother Nature, right?
I actually talk about that in the first chapter of the book. Like when you're raised, I started with birth to 12, birth to menarche, as the first stage of a woman's sensual, sexual, and reproductive life, because you don't suddenly become a full-born Venus on a half shell at 13 and like know what you like and what you don't like. You have to have a reference for your body as holy and complete, integrated, as well as being able to name parts, name your desires. So one of the things in there is teaching your daughter about her body as holy earth early, like to really start from a young age, teaching the respect and the integration of yourself as part of nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And just to kind of double click on that word respect, it's like there is not shame behind the respect of like you have to keep this to yourself, like it is only for you, or no, right? I think the message often is like no sex until marriage, or don't be a slut, or also don't be a
Yeah.
prude, right? Like there's so many mixed messaging that we receive. And I'm hearing more and more, kids are becoming sexually active at younger ages. And so I think it's important, like we're having these conversations with kids. And I think especially for women, knowing the importance, and as you said, like that having that respect in your body for your body.
Yeah, that you can actually tell what your yes and no is from a really young age is an important part of becoming a sovereign and sexual being. Being a sexual being isn't just being a yes all the time. It's being like very clear, like, what do I desire? How is my body responding to this person in this situation? So in the second stage, which is menarche to first intercourse. So first period to first intercourse, there's a lot of that cultivation of like, what do you really want? And I use all the average ages in the book, like it's still about 12 for first period and about 17 for first intercourse, even though there's a range around it. So, what are the kind of questions you're asking in that time period? Uh, and yeah, one of them is becoming very discerning about your yes and your no,
Mhm.
which follows you through your whole life and into other domains, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we
Yeah.
talk about the concept of, people pleasing and how that so prevalent in our sex lives. And, so often the women that I have coming into, my work that I do as a therapist and a coach, it's like we're having sex with our partners for the validation of them. And that is not sustainable, right? That is not long-term sustainability. If you're having sex with that being your motivator, that's going to die out pretty quickly, is from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, there's that thing of like empathy sex.
Mm-hmm.
It'll make them feel good, and you're sort of like not that into it at the moment, but it's kind of a charitable act. In a long-term relationship, sometimes you just do that. But I think you're getting at this deeper question of like, there's overt consent, and then there's subconscious consent, the kind that's like, yeah, I'm really, really, I am in tune. My words are in tune with my own emotions and my body. And what happens when you're just giving a mental yes or no, but the body wasn't there? And that's part of the early
Mm-hmm.
attempt to integrate. There's a piece in the book on a new model of consent that I called RBDSMA. Have you seen this?
I don't, tell me more.
It was such a beautiful piece for me. Uh, it's R is relationships, B is boundaries, D is desires, S is sexual health, M is meaning, and A is aftercare.
Mm.
Very long acronym, but if you're gonna enter into a sexual, like you're gonna have sex with somebody, and you sort of like want to know more, that you're on the same page, exploring these questions are really interesting.
Yeah.
So I was dating a little bit last year, and there's a man that I'm very interested in. We've known each other a very long time, and yet I didn't really want to mess it up, you know.
Yeah.
Like, but I didn't want to mess up our friendship with sex unless I knew what it was about. And so I finally said, okay, if we did have sex, what meaning would you make out of it?
Mm.
And he said, well, for me, it would mean that we were starting a relationship. And I said, oh, well, it wouldn't really, I mean, that wouldn't mean that for me because I live on the other side of the earth, and and I get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're going to bed about that time. Like, no, you know what I mean? It's like there was a way for us to enter into a richer dialogue so that we were on the same page and it didn't lead to pain later.
Mhm.
But I think they're getting more nuanced conversations around our yeses and our nos. And just to back up a little bit, like the intention in writing the book overall was, both this thing about the transgenerational communication and having empathy for all the stages of your life. But there's one piece, it's like your soul spark, Rachel, was there when you came into the body, and it stays constant throughout your entire life while the body's doing all of these sinewy changes, getting older, going through its monthly cycles, its pregnancy cycles, all of those things. And how do you stay in touch with the spark of your soul while honoring the full embodiment? And when I looked at how people had written about a woman's life stages before, it was maiden, matron, crone. And those were all defined primarily in relationship to whether or not you are a viable, fertile thing.
Mhm.
So maiden, you can have a baby, but you haven't yet. Matron, you've had a child and you still can have more. And crone, you can't have a child anymore. And I thought that is such a limited view for us who live in our bodies every single day. And that the ignorance around what happens after menopause, like it's menopause and then it's a flat thing from there till 90 or whatever, that couldn't have been true.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
was another motivation, is trying to create clarity around those older stages. And then the other one is like really emphasizing the current era, that we are in such an unusual time where a woman who is able to have a child has so many questions about whether she should do it, which women couldn't even ask 50 years ago. You just did. And with who, alone or with another person? Should I do it with artificial technology enhancements, reproductive technology, all kinds of things along those lines? And then the longevity, where you're living 30 years beyond what you were originally designed to live, with or without hormonal support, like that completely changes the way we live. So it's also really, I really wanted to drop into current science as well as sort of the longer arc spiritual story of being in your body, fully alive. So that's part of what's behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just the respect coming through for that too, because a woman like myself has chosen not to have children. And so if I
Mm.
if I fall into that category, am I just fucked for the rest of my life, right? There's no, like, I have no meaning to life. I have no right, like, do I fall into a different bucket now in terms of your, like, and this is going to allude more to your book, but like, where does a woman that does choose child free fall in the nine lives of women? Is it the same or different?
It's that in that section on matrescence where you're making the decision to be a mother or not a mother, it's in there. And you're like representing something really vital. Like 1 in 5 women throughout history ended their childbearing years without having a child. And now in like Tokyo, it's 1 in 3.
Mm.
And in the West, in most recent numbers, it's 1 in 4. So 25% of women won't have a child. But in most recent surveys from the Gallup polls and things like that, they're saying 1 in 2
Wow.
young women are saying no, that we just can't afford it. We don't want to disturb, we don't want to pass on our family trauma. The earth is not, the earth can't sustain it. You know, the society is crazy. We're just not doing it. And like to tap into whether it's personal or it's collective or it's like the intelligence of Gaia as an organism, limiting population, who knows? But you have people who are child free by choice. You have people who are child free by because something isn't working because of endocrine disruption in the environment. And so there is I believe a whole reframing around one carries the spark of life forward in so many ways, supports the community, gives life to new ideas, whether it's physically through the body or in caring for the earth or in some other way. And like there can be no more judgment.
Mm.
And this because this goes back to what we're talking about at the beginning, the maiden matron crone idea, that it's so embedded in our genetic and ideation mimetic inheritance that you're valuable because of childbearing. But that is not anymore the case. Now we're in choice and we can make beauty in a lot of ways.
Mm.
So I put that in the matrescence section because the questions you ask if you decide to go ahead with a baby that are very different than if you decide not to. And then you have to deal with all the other things, the questions of how do I avoid getting pregnant while being fertile and making all of those choices. So that chapter is actually the fattest chapter in the book because you're in such a, whew, and it's kind of, separated into, and I was lucky to have amazing interviews with experts like Katie Seppi on Child Free by Choice, yeah, and interviewing people who have deep expertise in some of these areas that I do not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is wonderful and I appreciate like that you included that as part of the book because so often as you said in this older literature it is so heavy in motherhood. And so
Because it is like such an intense thing to carry a life in your belly. So they put a lot of effort into describing that for the people who are going through it. And so but this other piece is just now getting to be explored.
Mhm.
And there's a woman, do you know Lainey Molnar? She's like a big Instagram cartoon fashion person, but she talks about this a lot.
Mhm.
And she does it in a way that normalizes it for everyone else. Like just love the person in front of you for their actual choices. Stop judging each other.
Mhm.
Like this, like no make wrong is the movement forward. Like I'll give you a little of the tantric worldview, which is also woven through the book, classical tantra.
Yeah.
It says that your job, nobody else will ever be Rachel.
Mhm.
You will, no matter what your racial, gender, class profile, nonetheless, you will always see the world from just where you see it. No one else will see it like you. And your entire job in a body is to fully experience it and then reflect that back to the whole.
Mhm.
Just fully be alive in all your sensory joy. And
Mhm.
that my job in seeing you is to just see you and reflect you and celebrate you.
Mhm.
And that's a very different thing. Like, oh, you're not doing it right. You know, why walk in the world like that? So boring.
Oh, that sounds just like liberation came up for me in that, and also like a sense of pressure almost. Like now, okay, now I just feel like there's pressure. Like I need to just be me, and that can be really hard, I think, at times of when you're interfering with
Ooh,
other people. So I love that.
interesting.
Yeah,
Pressure being yourself.
yeah.
Okay, so that what I feel when you say that is like the way that we walk in the shield of social acceptability all the time, and that like we can hide behind that.
Mhm.
And that's a little bit easy, but also ultimately like very depressing to our dharmic light.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
like, oh, come on, let me out, let me out. And that when you crack that, when that shield pops, all things are possible.
Yeah, I think of that moment of like the zero fucks given mindset of like I'm just gonna be me, like you'll figure it out. Like it's not my responsibility to like, assess you and manage your emotions around how I'm acting or what I'm doing. uh,
That's true. And there's a subtlety in that. Like zero fucks given is stage one.
mhm.
Like because it's like a slight defiance energy
Yeah.
that allows you to break through. But when the defiance goes away, then it's like it's got nothing to do with fucks given or not given. It's just like I just being me. And that's like that movement requires such a letting down of thousands of years of programming on how you should be. It's often not safe in a culture to be your fully expressive self. And so we're navigating the reality of safety
Mm,
and the desire to show it. So I think what you're doing with your practice and what we do and gather people together is like creating spaces where it's not just safe, but it invites you to express the fullness of your being,
yeah.
and more expansive.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, were we talking about the book? Because I totally lost track.
I do. That's why I said we're not coming into this scripted, like, let's just have a conversation and see where it goes. Uh, those are my favorite types of people to have on the podcast that are able to do that. So I appreciate that. Yeah,
Mhm.
we can definitely get back to the book. So we're in,
Okay.
yeah. So like, can you go over what the lives are and the
Yeah.
stages
So
are?
the stages are they're 9 stages coincidentally because they weren't intentionally designed to be like the 9 months of pregnancy or something like that, but they just worked out to be 9 stages. So the first one is zero to menarche when you're the preparing your and the job in that is really getting to know your body, getting to know your desire, learning how to communicate, and there's a lot more information in there on how to do that. There's a couple of beautiful interviews that I put in there with a woman from Deepa Narayana, who wrote a book called Chup, which is really about the global instinct to tell girls to be quiet and to like accommodate their uncle, et cetera. And what and also what does it mean this period in life of becoming and belonging, in this like becoming yourself. Just what we're talking about, like how do you create an ecosystem where they can be as authentic as possible from the earliest possible age. Then period to first intercourse, which we talked a little bit about. First intercourse to reproductive intent. And the questions that are coming up in 17 to about 25, that's the current age when women really begin in the West to start considering having a child. Although first baby age is 30 now on
Mm,
average. Even some women have it very young, but it's much, much older than it used to be. And there's things like that I put statistics in each chapter because if you're not really tracking that actively, you might be surprised at how different someone's life is now than when I was coming up, for example. So that's the third stage. And in here, you're looking at more things along the lines of all of your choices in uh, uh, birth control, all of your choices in discerning what your sexual appetite really is, like what does turn you on, what kind of relationship style do you have? Getting to know yourself as a sexual being is the task of this age. And then if you do decide to have a child, the next stage is matrescence. And I call it matrescence because it is a becoming. It's like adolescence or sapiescence that your identity changes and really stepping into that. And what is going on in that? That's a very rich chapter. Again, we talk in there about child free and different approaches to that. Pregnancy, fetal development, all of those things, but in a new way. I really try to address it from the integration of the mind, body, soul, your dharmic purpose, the collective ecosystem of Earth.
mm, mm,
Then we go into perimenopause, which is a mysterious and annoying phase
mm.
because you're still having periods, but you're so hormonally volatile and there's no clear indicator of what's happening. And it starts a lot earlier than people think, like 8 years before menopause on average. And you're like, why am I suddenly irritable or gaining weight or having sleep difficulties or brain fog? And so we go through that a little bit in this stage. And then also this is coinciding often with times when you're starting to care for aging parents. It's a very perimenopause and early menopause are like a really intense time of transition.
Mm,
Then active menopause, which is only 2 years on average. And that's when you hear a lot about the symptoms. And this is a very important psychospiritual developmental milestone
mm,
because now you're stepping into, like, for the first time in your adult life, no periods and no cycles that you have to ride on the monthly,
mm,
which are as everyone knows by this point, four these 4 monthly cycles of like expansion, contraction, rest, expel, like the whole thing that we're riding that ceases. And now I'm in this like even keeled, almost a masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have probably now I'm free of periods. If I've had children, I'm free of raising them. Usually, this is also coming to a time when they're no longer home, and that and I know myself enough that I can articulate more about what I'm here to do. I probably have a little money in the bank at this point. I'm, economically more stable. So you bloom into your 50s with this like expansive potential if you are not attached to the story of being youthful.
Mm-hmm.
If your value comes from beauty or having young children or being youthful, then you bloom into an entirely new stage of life, which is like outrageous. For me, the best years of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, so these 3 stages after menopause are things that I call the free period, which runs from about 52 to 67, very vibrant time. Then there are biomarkers that hit around 67 that change the way that we experience our bodies. There are things about how we digest sugar, how our brains work, how we process, muscular things. And, and then that period has different sexual needs. Like people are still having penetrative sex in this stage, but it becomes more about touch and intimacy and connection and yeah, differing needs, which we profile in there. And then the last stage, which is something that I call the resolution, that eighth stage was the glide. The last stage is the resolution, and it goes from about 78 or 80 to end of life. And again, there's another set of biomarkers, proteomic markers, genomic markers that hit around 78 to 80 for both genders that are independent of hormones. And then in this last stage, there's a quality of like, particularly for people who are in a female body, they're very likely to be unpartnered at this stage because men die so much earlier. And the need for intimacy, connection, touch, friendship, sexuality doesn't go away. Like women are still talking about how much they need it, but how much there's not an environment that supports it with another human and what kind of adaptations you can make. And in that chapter, I also talk about a phenomenon I find completely exciting. It's a research called gerotranscendence, or how so many elders are having an experience of like unity consciousness and the utter beauty of life and gratitude and healing and resolution, and what it takes to, what all the research shows on how to be a radiant, happy elder and what you can do now to make that happen. So it really does provide like an arc of our sexual selves nested in this context of our core identity as a timeless being and in the embodiment stages that accompany it. Yeah, that's the book.
Yes, and beautiful.
I put this cover, I designed the cover,
Yeah.
and it's meant to evoke, nipples and wombs and caves and cycles. And it has all the colors of skin and the vulva and, sort of woven into it. So,
Yes. It's
yeah.
beautiful. It's beautiful. And I definitely want to make sure that we link this and people can find it and read it because I think you're really bringing a different, more holistic, empowered voice to this messaging. And I think that especially in those menopausal and postmenopausal stages, is so crucial because often the messaging that we receive is like, well, it's all downhill from here. Your sex life is gone. You're no longer sexual. You're gross if you're having sex in your older years. Like,
Yeah,
it's
no.
shit.
Sorry, ladies.
Yeah.
Sorry, all you young. Don't be biased on the young. I'm having better sex now than I did when I was 40. I would say, and I'm not, I say that, anecdotally, but I hear that from everyone because we know ourselves and we know what to ask for.
Yeah.
And that's also a big milestone. The other thing I wanted to tell you about the book is I end each chapter with empathy for this stage.
Mm,
So if you have a daughter or you have a mother or an auntie or a coworker and they're in this stage, here's what they might be experiencing. And I got some of the first reviews came in and they were from men who read the book end to end.
mm,
And and one of the surprises for me was, that there is a lot of curiosity in the masculine about what women are really going through. And they're also like they really don't have access to holistic education on that. So yeah, I was happy to see the interest.
mhm. Yeah. Can we get a list of those men? Because I know a lot of single ladies that might benefit from having them.
I was like, do you guys want me to do a guided thing on this? I can do a course on it for you if you'd like. We can have it for men only. Ask me anything. You
Yeah.
know, what have you always wanted to know?
Gosh, I think that would be hugely beneficial. How I kind of got started in this, I started with a company called Pure Romance and doing parties for women only, um,
Uh-huh.
identifying people only, and talking about sex toys, talking about sexual health and importance of lubricants and sexual desire and all these things. And it's so I still do this very rarely, but it is so empowering when women come together and gather in that space and they feel safe to have those conversations. But so often the messaging was like, God, I wish my spouse knew this, or my partner knew this, or
Yeah.
how do I share like conversations with their kids even, around that. So whether they have daughters or sons. And yeah, so I think there's definitely a need there for the male population that want to go down this route.
Yeah, it also helps, like if you're wondering what is going on hormonally or something, just understand it, and then you could be in sync with it. You can tune in with it a little bit more. The the thing on like the aid, I started a company in 2017 making plant-based intimate care products. It's kind of part of the way that, other than the tantra, that was moving into herbal healers.
Mhm.
And so I have heard so much from women on how much pain they tolerate from dryness or lack of arousal. And most people don't really tap into how much their anxiety, their lack of sleep, and their stress is correlated to the inability to get wet.
Yeah.
And that the number one thing you can do to bring more lubrication into the body, other than hydrate, is to bring your whole system into like a softening. Do a
Mhm.
lot of breath work, move your spine, do little squats, pulse, bring blood flow into the pelvic region, and relax the body because the tissues of the vaginal wall and the vulva they don't hold any moisture. It's
Mhm.
all underneath in another layer. So you have to bring blood flow in to push that through. So a lot of the inability to get wet is not just hormonal. It's that you're sitting too much at a desk or you're not moving enough. And there are ways to change that. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. I think everybody needs to get a copy of your book. Yeah, this is great information. Absolutely. So I'm curious. Yeah, I wanted to ask, like, what happens to a woman that is just chooses to take that resistance to sexuality in these lifespans? If she's like, I don't want to do it, I'm shutting down to it, I'm resistant to it, it's not for me. What happens?
Well, you're hitting my core bias, which is we're sexual beings, and that's not an. There are some people who are asexual from the get,
Yeah.
but most of us, you know, human touch, sensuality,
Mhm.
is our core design. It floods our body with oxytocin. It counteracts all of the stresses of modern life. It makes us not depressed. It makes us creative, vibrant beings. The sexual arousal, like if you orgasm every day, it improves heart health, it improves blood flow, it improves brain health, cognition. It's like generally a great health booster.
Mhm.
And there's a piece of like, this is your power center.
Mhm.
You have, I like, even if you're listening in an auditory way, like you can drop without watching, just see if you can inhale and like bring your attention down into the base of your body and notice if there's anything that's like, has no sensation or you can't feel it. And then try to take a big breath and bring all kinds of additional attention down into the pelvic basin, into the lips of the vulva, into the perineum, into your clitoris, like just kind of feel it. And then start squeezing and pulsing, like pulse the vaginal canal together, like squeeze that whole tube upward toward the tailbone, pulse the perineum up toward the tailbone, and see if you can just bring a little bit of sensation in there. And then notice how once you tune in down there, like there's a little bit of a radiating light or heat that comes out of the pelvic basin and moves up toward the navel, up toward the heart. And the more you cultivate this, it's like can become a center from which the entire body radiates with a life force.
Mhm.
And when you integrate, like you can tell the difference between when you're speaking from just the neck up and it's just the brain, or even just the heart up and it's just your sweet, warm heart and your intellect, or if you're speaking all the way down and including your sex. The
Mm,
potency, the power, the presence, the awareness that's there in your body when you use your whole system, when it all comes online. And if you just say, I'm not interested as I age in having any sex or any contact to that, you lose a whole wellspring of potency, power, and awareness. In fact, like if you have any question in your life that you're confused about and you can't figure it out from here, you can just drop it and say, well, what does my womb say? Or what does my can we say pussy? What
yes.
does my pussy say?
I thought it was gonna
Like
go.
it's your arbiter. It's like an intuitive guide. Like if I want something and it's a yes for me, I get a little bit wet. Ooh, a little bit, ooh, a little excitement, and to let it be part of your wholeness.
Mhm.
Now, if you have built up trauma, if you've been sexually abused or violated in any way, if this has happened in your system, why would you want to go there?
Mm,
Now, why would you want to include it? Because it'll bring up a lot of ick. And so the other invitation is to be, if you're not able to touch it, not to force it, like to have compassion for yourself and to slowly invite a little bit more light in.
mm,
As you know from your work, if you have had, if you're going to heal, you're looking at things that happened in your past, but you're looking at them now from who you are today, who can handle those things.
mm,
You can look from the light and from your mature self at things that happened long ago and invite those things to come back into you so that you can tap into that potency. Wow, that was a long answer.
that
But
was
yeah,
incredible. I mean, yeah, I just think of the name of this podcast, right? Like owning your sexual self. I think this is it. Like this is it. This is you doing that, and you're listening to this show for a reason. Either you have some curiosity, maybe you're on this journey already, healing already, expanding, and so I think this, yeah, like you just described this podcast to a T.
yeah. So this piece, thank you. And thank you for having that always on in the forefront. This idea that you have a seed of potency and power that is so vital that the world had to tuck it away. That if you were in that potency, you would be unregulable.
Mm,
You're creating whether you choose to or not, you have the power to make a new life in your body. There
mhm,
are many religions in South India and in tribal and indigenous religions that believe that if sexuality is not at the center of the religion, it's a dead religion. Could you imagine?
wow.
And that's what you're the life carrier. That's like your how do you create? So to just think about what the cost is of putting that into deep freeze.
Hmm.
I have a wonderful mentor who in the collective trauma work, which is the other piece of work that I spent a lot of time doing. Um, and I think this is correlated to that, who says the appliance in the house that uses the most energy is the freezer. And that's the way it is emotionally. That anything that we repress and keep in deep freeze takes a tremendous amount of energy in our system.
Mm,
So we're like, whoa, I don't want to look at that thing. Or like if it's in the pelvic or the sexual, I don't want to look at that thing. And so how do you invite that to soften so that energy is freed up to do other more creative work? And that's one of the reasons we heal our sexual cultural biases. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah. And I think it's like the messaging too that's coming through too is like get really curious on who you are and including sexuality in that
that's right.
church, right? Like not for your husband, not for your partner, not for your mom, like for you. I think is the like do this for you, figure out who you are as a sexual being. And yeah, and I so often, I've been doing this for over a decade too. It's like the women that are going down this path, going down this journey of sexuality and exploring, it is flowing through to all other parts of their life. They're more confident in
That's
their
right.
work, they're more expressive, they're feeling more into their bodies and into their emotions, right? They're having greater relationships in friendships, in partnerships, in relationships with their kids. Like it truly, truly flows through to all aspects. It's not just about sex. I say that so odd. It's not just about
Right.
penis and
No.
vagina. It is so much more than that.
Although we love those things.
Yes. Yes, we
Yeah. Okay, yes, I couldn't agree more with that. The invitation is to be fully integrated and fully alive
do.
from the day you are born until the day you take your last breath. And to know that you changing will change all the people around you and that you become like a little point of light that it has like a contagion. Your openness, if you can talk to your mother, one of the things, whew, so much. I published a list about 3 years ago of 100 questions you could ask your mother about her sexual or reproductive experiences. And I sent it out to, we have 100,000 people on the Rosebud list. And we sent it out and I got so many return emails that said I could never talk to my, I could never ask my mom these questions. And I said, just try it, pick five and see if you could break into a new conversation. And people reported outrageous results. Like, tell me what it was like for you nursing. Tell me what your first sexual experience was like. What do you think about kink? What really turns you on? Like you're like talking to their moms about that, and it opened up a level of conversation and dialogue that they had no idea
Mhm.
possible. So I highly encourage that.
Yeah. Yeah, kind of going back to when I was really into doing these sex toy parties, so often it would be like mom and daughter sitting next to each other, or mom and daughter-in-law sitting next to each other. I remember having my mother-in-law at one of my parties, or doing a party for my mom, my aunts. Like it's just it's wild, and I always just had an appreciation for that because I'm like, okay, this is you're cracking a block here, like by allowing this to happen. And sure, it can be awkward and crunchy and weird and like you're like, oh mom, that's gross, or mom, like you're doing what? Like, but it to have those conversations, like I think it's a place of vulnerability, and I think there can be so much growth and again, an empowerment that comes from that.
Yeah, there is a piece in the book that the culture of womanhood is passed through the mother.
Mm-hmm.
And that in many cultures, like we were often shocked at sort of vaginal mutilation or vulvar mutilation in women in different cultures. But you know what? The women do it.
Mm-hmm.
The
Mm-hmm.
women do the surgery. The women sew them up. Like we pass it that way, or the shame, or the like how you should dress, all of that stuff. So absolutely, those kind of parties, women's circles, it's much easier to do it in person, and it's much easier to do it guided,
Yeah.
because you can help people notice, like,
Yes.
oh, put a hand on your heart. Like that looks like it's getting a little intense. Can we shake that off? Very important to sit with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And then the piece on, like, even when I started Rosebud Woman, we were articulating for the first time, like I went out to buy a moisturizer for me that was plant-based, but it was in like the back of the drugstore, or it was just pathologized in general, and or treated as a lubricant for sexual intercourse. And I decided that like sexual self-care could be a whole category, and that it's meant to be every day, all the days of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we did that, like sexual wellness wasn't even a thing.
Yeah.
And the first book I wrote on this subject was called The Invitation to Intimate Self-Care, and really about like knowing your parts, touching your body, understanding your cycles, living a sensual life, and doing it for you, not for
Mm-hmm.
performative reasons.
Yeah. Mm. Thank you. I have all the warm and fuzzies after this conversation. Love, please share, like, where can we find your books? The Rosebud Woman, that's a website. You mentioned you have a code for listeners.
Yeah,
And how can
okay,
people
okay,
find more
okay, sure.
about you?
So Rosebud Woman is intimate and plant-based self-care. It now is extended to body care. We have body oils and all kinds of things. And we're doing a Mother's Day curation if you like silky, pearly, other things like that that are more object-oriented. And you can take 15% off site-wide if you use Rachel's code, which is sexual self. And then the book is also there. You can find it, just search Nine Lives, or you can find it on Amazon. My website is christinemariemason.com, and I'm doing Tantra classes and retreats a few times a year. And we do every month open community satsang where people just come and learn and talk to one another and break out on all kinds of topics about living fully as a integrated being. So that's coming up. I won't do the dates, but it's once a month because I don't know when you're going to air this. Maybe you want to cut the last piece. I don't know. And I do a podcast also called The Rose Woman on Love and Liberation. And we cover a lot of topics on living well in a body, which extend beyond sexuality. And a lot of the people who are interviewed in the book also came on the show. So if you want to go deeper in any of the sections, you can always come back and find them on the show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really
I
appreciate
love your energy. It
it.
was really fun.
Yeah, very nice conversation. I know we could probably talk for hours on this stuff, and
I
um,
want to hear more about these parties.
yeah.
And I think, and not just because because of what you were saying on what comes up in safe spaces where people can talk to each other about things that are otherwise like, ooh, you
Mhm.
know, and just to really explore the potency of that. I think it stays with people more when they have stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially when it feels relatable. And I think that is, it's the normalization that comes through of like, I'm not alone. Not the only one that's going through this. Or now I actually have a space where I can ask, a professional a question where I'm not in a doctor's office. I'm not being rushed out. I'm not being judged by others. It really has been a nice thing.
Well, let's put that as a fine point on the end because no making wrong of anybody else's choices, and you're never alone.
Yes.
Like almost everything that happens in the human field is a shared experience. So, to the collective enlightening move.
Yes. Cheers.
Cheers, ding, ding, ding. Thank you so much.
Thank you.